Hi, this is Ken Patterson, the host of the What's Neat show over at Model Railroad Hobbyist Magazine and the What's Neat This Week in Model Railroading podcast that you all love to watch every week, keeping you informed of what's new in the hobby and with my great podcast crew. Now, if you like the NMRAx content that you're watching, don't forget to hit the like button and or subscribe, and be sure to hit that little bell icon at the bottom so that you are notified of the next show coming up. So rock and roll, guys. Enjoy the rest of this show. How's that? That last one was the best because I got my rock and roll in there.
Hi everyone, welcome to another NMRAx. This is October 2022. That's 2 years worth of NMRAXs, and we've got a great lineup today. Eight great presenters, great clinicians from all over the globe, as is the NMRA all over the globe, and so are our presenters. And it's really good that we're back. So if you sit back, enjoy the next 4 hours, and then we'll be another 4 hours to give you a total of eight, wherever you are in the world today. Speed, I will let you go.
Good morning. Welcome. I'm Speed at the bottom of the helix. Our next presenter is a retired U.S. Navy senior chief with a background in advanced electronics and electronic systems. Currently the IT director at Florida State University, and his volunteer activities include being the NMRA Standards and Conformances Manager, an IT team member, NRAIL board advisor, and president of the Big Bend Model Railroad Association right there in Tallahassee, Florida. He models in N-scale with a big focus on T-track modular railroading. Please welcome Andy Zimmerman.
Well, hello everyone. This is my first time presenting at an NMRAx, so they set me up as the opening act, and we all know what that means. I'm supposed to get everybody warmed up and for all the cool stuff that comes later. So please forgive me if I make any rookie mistakes. I know that you're used to highly articulate and technical presenters, so I will do my best to keep you engaged. What I'll be presenting here today is an all-in-one DCC system that's portable and mobile, and that I built over a course of about a year plus, just making changes and improvements. But I did it during the pandemic, and it incorporates more functionality than any typical off-the-shelf system that you're going to get, and it's all together in one big nice package. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So during 2020 and 2021, the pandemic, the lockdown, I found that I needed to keep myself busy. So I needed to challenge myself. And I had a need to build something that was robust, that could power our T-track layouts, our N-scale traveling layouts. It shows. It. I had the time, the tools, and the knowledge, the skill, and the ability. So why not tie it all together and create a system that could run almost any DCC, if not every DCC controlled layout, especially if they're modular layouts. So, my dad used to tell me, if you see a need, then develop a solution. Well, what better way than to innovate while you have the time and the knowledge, the tools, and the know-how. So, um, I heard it once said that necessity is the mother of invention. It's true, but the father is creativity, and knowledge is the midwife. So necessity won out. Frankly, I was tired of changing out all the equipment, plugging everything in, getting it all arranged and tested. I wanted to do something more efficient that was more plug and play. Maybe it's just the IT in me, but I just wanted to make sure that I could just plug it in and turn it on, the system would be ready to go. So using a little creativity and a little knowledge, I created this unit. So what you're seeing here is an overall picture. There'll be more later, but the overall picture of the system that I created. I've even added some more additional functionality just since I took this picture. But at the heart of this system is an NCE PH Pro 5 amp command station. It's powered by the P515. It's a 15 amp or 15 volt, excuse me, 5 amp system, and and I also use an NCE power cab as my throttle. The system was integrated with a Raspberry Pi 4, and that's running the latest iteration of the M. Steve Todd JMRI software. The system is fully upgradable. As far as the JMRI is concerned, it's fully upgradable. You can run the latest iteration with the latest updates. Power is monitored through by a DCC concepts alpha meter, and I just realized I wasn't changing the slide. That's the PH Pro system, Pro NCE, powered by that P515. So, and that's the NCE Pro cab, or power cab, excuse me. So it's all usable through the throttle, the power cab throttle, and it's monitored. Everything is monitored. The system power is monitored through a alpha DCC Concepts alpha meter, and connections are made through the alpha panel, and the system is protected by the by a Digitrax PM42. All right, DCC power is also provided within this system. It's provided at 13.8 volts. Excuse me, DCC power is provided through the system at 13.8 volts, and the DC is for accessories were provided at 12 volts. The internal 12-volt power supply is adjustable to ensure that you're getting 12 volts out from the outputs. Let's see. That DC system, it provides power to my DC accessory bus. You can see in the pictures here that the DC output is the black and white outputs. The yellow and red, or yellow and black, red and black, those are the DCC outputs. But also included in the system, I provided an HDMI connection, a secondary HDMI connection for a secondary monitor, and USB 3.0, which is basically right here, for updates to the Raspberry Pi and what have you. Let's see. So picking the right case was, in a word, paramount. After looking at multiple cases, I settled on the Rigid Pro. I settled on the Rigid Pro tool system, specifically the Rigid 22-inch Pro organizer. This case appeared to meet all of the requirements for the build. One of the major things that I really needed was this recessed lid that you can see here. As I was going to mount a 10-inch touchscreen display, and that would give me the clearance that I needed to utilize the center deck that I was going to build over this well right here, without fear of damaging my screens or any of the other equipment that was monitoring power, etc. So it has deep wells, and it got sturdy dividers, and the inside liner of the lid, the deck lid up at top, is removable and snaps firmly back into place. It pops loose at the bottom here and off to the left and right, and it just slides out from the top up here. So there's a hollow cavity behind it with some supports, but you're gonna have to trim through some of the supports to run some of the wires, but nothing that degrades the rigidity of the deck lid. So With a little modification, there's room for just about everything in there, as you're going to see. The dividers that are here in the deck are fully removable, and they're slotted on the inside lip to help mount the deck lids. This case has 3 wells. You can pull the dividers out and make it one giant well if you don't want to have it divided up. But in the left well, over to the left-hand side, I mounted incoming power, which was 110 volts coming in, and I have a power strip mounted to the very back of the center well, and the rear wall is hardwired to that incoming power. All of this is wired through an IEC 320 power switch, which is fused at 5 amps. The NCE DCC8 Power Pro command station sits in this center well right here, along with the PM42, which is mounted over the top of the PH Power Pro. The P515 that powers the NCE system is mounted on the right side over here, and the DC power supply that powers the accessory bus I've got mounted at the rear here, and then of course all the power connections are mounted through the back deck. So because you can remove all the dividers, like I said, it can be one large well or it can be 2 wells. And so I had 3 deck plates for the left, the right center well, and the center well and the right well. I cut it all out of masonite. I made it from that 1/8 inch or 3mm masonite, and pre-fitted them to fit into the respective wells. Each divider has a pair of 3mm 1/8 inch slots already built in right here. Sorry, that's built in right here, and those slots are molded into them, and the 1/8 inch masonite fits very snugly right into those slots. As you can see here, it's a little bit more of a close-up of the slots and the wells. You have to trim the corners off a little bit. As you can see here, you have to trim the corners off a little bit just to get it to fit in there snugly. But pair of nippers and you're good to go. So this last picture here, this is to show that how well it fits. But this last picture here is a kind of an early iteration of how the unit was developing and coming along. But I wanted to show what the 3 decks look like once they were fitted in to the top of the case. And all right, so I used the Anderson power poles. They were used for the DCC and DC connections to the all-in-one system. Like I said, it's 110 volts AC. Power is supplied via the IEC 320 5 amp fused power socket. DCC outputs, as I mentioned earlier, were monitored by the DCC Concepts alpha meter, and they're protected by a Digitrax PM42, which is mounted below that center deck lid. So in this earlier picture here, like I said, red, black, yellow, black represent our DCC connections. With T-track model railroading, the red black represents the outside line, and the yellow black represents the inside line, and then white black is for your DC output. We deliberately mount these Anderson power poles in different configurations so that you can't accidentally plug in a DCC line into the DC power. So that's the beauty of an Anderson power pole. You can configure them any number of ways. So let's see. This circuit breaker panel that you see at the top here, that is a 3D printed panel that I mounted the lenses, the colored lenses in. LEDs were mounted into the inside of those so that I could get a visual indication and didn't have to like lift up and look underneath. So I mounted all of the LEDs. I mounted connectors to the PM42, then ran the connector up to the LEDs that were mounted inside of each one of these red and green lenses. All right. So real quick, a little about the switched power. The one thing I didn't want to have happen is to build all of this up and build a nice system, have it have it created and ready to go, and then not having it run through a fuse switched would be a problem. Now, one would think that having a 15 amp surge protector would work, but as you and I all know, those 15 amp surge protectors do not necessarily trip in a timely manner. So I wanted to make sure that it was fused incoming power was fused coming in. So I specifically chose this IC 320, IEC 320, excuse me, because it's fused circuit straight out of the box. Fuse is easily removed, as you can see here. You can see the power switch where it's on, and then when I took it off, I pulled the power plug out, so you can see there's a little tab right here, and you pop that tab, and the whole thing slides out, and your 5 amp fused circuit, or your 5 amp fuse, pops right out. So let's see. Yeah, and these 5 amp fuses, they're like $5 for a box of 10. So, and I always keep them in my parts kit because you and I all know that it's the little things that bite you in the butt when you're at a show or you're trying to do a run, and the little things seem to defeat us quite quickly if we're not prepared. So, all right, so let's talk a little bit about the upper deck lid. The center deck lid houses an onboard 10-inch touchscreen. It's the monitor is mounted using rare earth magnets. Now these ones specifically, they come from, like your little name badges or your little name plates. You get a pack of 10 of them from Amazon for cheap. I mounted those to the back of the monitor, and then I applied my epoxy and set it to the deck lid and waited for it to set up. And now the monitor is fully removable, and I don't have to unscrew anything. I don't have to, rip a bunch of Velcro off or any of that. So initially, I had a 7-inch touchscreen, but as you can tell, it was getting a little bit difficult to read, and the touchscreen became intermittent. So since I had the room, I replaced it with a 10-inch screen, and the 10-inch screen fills up that well quite nicely. For a secondary monitor, I purchased a 15-inch ultra thin monitor, and it is literally weighs about a pound or less. It's ultra thin, and I use it when I'm performing programming or doing updates, or when I want to see my tables, like my switches, turnouts, um, or I'm accessing the roster for JMRI. It's easier for me to read. Then I have a picture of that final um, of that monitor in the final slide. So, in order to do that, I had to connect a secondary HDMI output. So your JMRI has two HDMI outputs, and if I ran one secondarily through the back of uh, the case lid, and then down, and then out the side, and I'll show you a little bit later where it's mounted on the side. But literally, the monitor, you can just plug it directly in now. Make sure you tell JMRI, or excuse me, tell your Raspberry Pi that you have two monitors, and you're good to go. All right. So, all right. So that center deck lid houses, like I said, that onboard 10-inch screen, and I think there we go. That was the secondary 15-inch screen. So with the 10-inch and the 15-inch, you can get everything you need done. Anecdotally, this 15-inch screen, you can just plug your Android phone in straight into it. If you're doing anything off of your Android phone, you can plug straight into it, and if it's not your turn to run things or do things, and you watch whatever's on your Android phone. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the Raspberry Pi. The Raspberry Pi is actually mounted inside the deck lid, and underneath this orange section that you see under the NCE power cab right here. I put that little flap there just to protect it, but it's got that little orange flip up panel, and it allows easy access, which I'll show you here in a minute. Let's see. In addition to being connected to this monitor, I can use the touchscreen with the pen that's mounted below, but I found it a little bit easier just to go ahead and use the wireless connectivity. It's with a wireless mouse and keyboard and touchpad, and that allows me to access all the throttles, all the turnouts, all the rosters, do my programming, etc. So the beauty of having this JMRI system on board here um, is it allows you to use your phones to run your railroad. So you can run it through engine driver or Y throttle. Use your old mobile phones. If you're wondering what to do with your old mobile phone because you didn't turn it in for some kind of upgrade, or you got to keep it, well, use it to run your model railroad. So let's see. All right, so the Raspberry Pi, like I said, it's mounted under the lid there. I flipped the lid up so you could see how it's mounted. These are HDMI cables, but they're just flat ribbon style HDMI cables. And they run straight to the 10-inch monitor there. And your Raspberry Pi, and there's a fan underneath here, kicks on, gives it a little bit of cooling. It doesn't really get that hot, but it mounts easily up underneath that space. The deck lid snaps back in. There's no pressure, and there's plenty of room. And all right, so the Raspberry Pi has numerous features in it that uses Linux-based OS. And like I said, it uses the M. Stephen Todd image available through the JMRI web, which is available through the JMRI website. This includes the wireless access point, and it's very robust for a small access point. It does have quite a large reach. It maintains a large footprint despite its tiny size. So Y throttle and engine driver are much the same if you haven't used them before on your throttles. Um, engine driver was developed by Stephen Todd for the Android, and Y throttle for the Apple devices. It gives you multiple. It gives you multiple throttles, as you can see here for the Apple. It gives you multiple throttles. It can be and the Y throttle can be downloaded from the Apple iTunes store. There's two. I meant to put this in, but there's two versions of Y throttle. One version is the free version, and the other version I think is like $9.99 or something. But the paid for version allows you to increase the functionality, and you can see things like turnouts and what have you. All right. You can run trains with the free version. You just don't see the turnouts and can't throw the turnouts. Not that I could tell. I tried it on my version and it did not have it. So, engine driver has multiple throttles. Again, it was developed by M. Stephen Todd, and as you can see here, that oh, excuse me, the M. Stephen Todd version is it is available for free, and it doesn't have any ads or anything else. So since Steve Todd developed the Raspberry Pi for developed, excuse me, the RPi image that I'm using, engine driver works really well with that JMRI integration. As you can see here, it gives you throttles, allows you to access your JMRI roster. You can get to all of your turnout controls, and it'll even show you routes, so that you can see where your train's at on the layout. So, all right. So I don't want to run through this too quick, but using the JMRI, I'm able, like I said, I was able to throw switches. There was a little bit of um, it was a little bit of a challenge, learning how to use JMRI and use it well, so that whenever you power up this all-in-one system, that it automatically starts up with all the turnouts available to anyone using Y throttle or using engine driver. And what I'm going to show here is that I'm able to throw the switches remotely in both engine driver and Y throttle, and I realize that this might be a little choppy, but it's like a 10-second little video. So anyway, so real quick, all I'm doing here is I've programmed in the turnouts on one of the yards, and I'm testing it out, and you can see by the lights that are switching that I'm able to switch them in and out easily using engine driver. And I should have apologized up front. I'm just getting over a very bad cold and sore throat, and I've only had my voice back for a couple of days now, so I apologize if I'm coughing. All right. So I know some are going to ask that typically I get asked. Um, is it I use the NCE switch cats to drive the Kato turnouts. The NCE switch cat's a simple little system. It performs well. I can power 2 switches with it easily enough per switch cat, and it also powers the trackside signals to throw the signals when I throw the switch. One thing I should note is that if somebody throws the switches manually, the lights won't change. So I always encourage anybody that's running uh, on our layouts that they throw every switch um, electronically and not manually, so that we don't have an incident or an issue. Um, all right. So just in case you missed it, the power indicator on my Android device is showing green here. Hold on, let me back up. So the jammer I provides much needed failsafe for the system, and it's available as part of the engine driver in Android, and it provides the ability to shut down the power on the system remotely in the event of an emergency. So what I was started to get at was, as you can see here, um, there gives you a power indication here that you have good power, and um, and you can see here above the word T-track in the DCC Concepts alpha meter that I have power out to the track. So, and I just hit the power in this next slide. I just hit the power, turned the power off. So um, power over here is now red, and the DCC alpha meter is telling me that I have no power out to the track. So, just in case you missed it, the power indicator on my Android device um, shows green, and the DCC Concepts power alpha meter, like I said, is showing, in this case, 14.1 volts. Um, and then when I hit the power, it shut everything down, and it shut down power to the track. Now, the beauty of this is, obviously, you're only shutting down power to the track. I didn't turn off um, any of the DC systems, the accessories. It didn't shut down my entire uh, all-in-one system. It only turned off power to the track, and that was it. And turning it on and off is quite easy. So if you're walking around um, with your tablet or your phone, and you're powering, for instance, a large T-track layout, and you're all the way at the other end, and you see a problem where there's a short, and the system will catch it, but you see, you see something odd happening, or maybe you see some magic smoke coming out, you can power it down immediately. Within a second or two, you can power everything down on the system immediately. Now everybody's going to shut down, um, but at least it will turn everything off so that you can uh, get your engine off of the track and what have you. So, and reset the system. So, all right. So the DCC accessory bus is a 6 amp power supply, and it's monitored by a pair of voltmeters uh, mounted in the deck lid that you can see right here. If you can see my cursor, but it's these DCC voltmeters are mounted right into the deck lid to the right of um, the 10-inch monitor. Um, the DC bus is split into 2 separate lines. I got bus 1 and bus 2. Um, Additionally, a separate accessory charging station that you're seeing here is provided for charging things like your Android devices or your phone or your Apple devices. I use it for recharging um, the Bluetooth speakers that we have, which are set out along the track to pick up sound and reproduce that sound all along the T-track layout. Um, so after a long day of being used, a lot of times those systems, as well as the little Bluetooth transmitters that I use, need to be recharged. So I just plug them right in here, and I recharge my peripherals. So a lot of times, you know, and a lot of you know this, when we're at a show or we're running trains, that power outlets are not always readily available. So this just makes it very simple, just to have everything right there in front of you and easily accessible for charging all the ancillary equipment. So the single NCE PH Pro 5 amp system has proven to be enough on its own. It had enough horsepower to ensure that our system in our last show was running and running well, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But however, to ensure reliability, I needed the ability to daisy chain PH Pros and add in additional boosters if necessary. So I added an additional 4-pin RJ11 jack. And if you know anything about NCE systems, it's just a straight wire 4-pin system, and it plugs into um, the left side of the PH Pro, which I'll show here in the next slide. But it allows me to daisy chain PH Pros if I need to. So here, that's a 40-foot cable. It's running to the left side of the PH Pro. If I need to daisy chain an additional PH Pro, I would come out of the just to the right. There's a little connection. If you can see my cursor right here, there's another connection here. I can daisy chain out of that and go another 40 feet or so, or 50 feet, or 100 feet, whatever I want to do, to the next PH Pro, and I can do that continuously for however many times I need to do it. The beauty of that is as long as I don't connect from the PH Pro power side of the system into the command bus, then the all-in-one uh, portable system maintains total control. So it maintains control over the power of each one of those PH Pros. Okay, so in the PH Pro remains central and in charge of the entire power system throughout our layout. So housing multiple power supplies inside the chassis does create some heat. I use these little micro miniature fans to provide air exchange and to keep the power supplies cool. I was very surprised that um, these little micro fans, they fit right into the side of the architecture on the side of the case, and they move air quite well. So um, it does not get all that hot. You know that even that 5 amp P515 that's mounted, just inside the case right here, it gets a little warm, but it doesn't get hot. So the DC system that is here is all vented, and it is designed to run cool, but still, moving air around any electronics is always a benefit. All right, so the entire system fits into one case, and it's interlockable with others. In this series, the whole system is mobile. Um, it's can be connected to a larger system. Um, Lastly, I guess this case in the system is stackable. It's interlockable. Um, I from top to bottom here, I've got the DCC all in one. The second case is a DC. There's the NCE DCE. Good God, I cannot talk. The NCE DCC throttles and components. The next case is all parts and accessories that we might need during the show. And then I have a box with tool or cables here, speakers, etc. And the bottom maintains all the tools, and the whole thing is a rollaway stack. So I guess maybe I should call it a mobile station as opposed to a portable station. And I know I've used those words interchangeably here. While the command station is in of itself portable, the whole unit is mobile. But it's a mobile train show, basically all in one. So for those that attend our show in Tallahassee in June, if you want to see this system or its sister system, you can stop by the T-track layout or the N-scale traveling layout. So some of my compadres had said that maybe it was a little bit of overkill. So um, I added this slide about overkill or future proofing. Some people have informed me that I may have overdeveloped the system, and they called it overkill. I think it more is future proofing, and I relied heavily on my train show experiences, especially the failures. Like I said, being defeated by a fuse or a battery or something, and having to run quickly to a store to get things. So there's times when I've been stopped dead in my tracks, pun intended, uh, because of a system or parts failure that could have been overcome easily with a little forethought and preparation. Um, as a prime example, I carry a redundant RPI system as a backup that has a copy of the backup of copy of my system backed up on it, and I carry additional SD cards um, to ensure that we have redundant versions of the main system. And this NCE system, it kind of got tossed into the fire. This last show, the NCE system was battle tested at our last show here at our show in this past June. We had a 108-foot spine, 108-foot spine of T-track with 5 peninsulas stretching anywhere from 10 to 12 feet. Normally, we have about 5 to 7 clubs that come together and run T-track at our show, and they were all depending on this newly constructed system because the one person that was supposed to help us out, or that normally runs all of our power, he took ill and couldn't come, so we had to very quickly get this system set up and battle tested. And that whole 108-foot spine with all of those peninsulas, um, it ran smoothly throughout the entire show. That 1.5 amp system did quite well. We had 8 to 10 trains with sound running at any given time. We calculated that we were running 10 scale miles of track across 114 T-track modules, which were mostly doubles. But we had some singles and triples, and of course a large yard that has some quads in it. This is some of the crew that was at our show. They were the guys that remained after to take the picture. So that's a picture of the system as it was completed in time for our show. I'm always looking for ways to improve the system or to streamline, but this system is fully portable, plug and play, plug into the lead modules, and away you go. So I think I'm getting pretty close to the end here. So I guess we'll be taking some questions and answers here in a minute, and I'll try to make sure that I am available in the breakout room afterwards if anybody has any questions. So this brings me to the conclusion of my presentation. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any build questions or any questions on how I did things. I've already helped a few people do some Digitrax systems as well as NCE systems. So, but happy to discuss it if anybody wants to talk about how you can create one for yourself. And these are my email addresses, seniorchiefz@outlook.com. Or if you want to reach out to me via the NMRA, you can go to tech-chair@nmra.org.
And you're ready for some questions?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. This was so good. And knowing your title at the NMRA, are we expecting a new portable DCC NMRA standard?
Yeah. I had not thought about that yet. One step at a time.
So questions from the public here. How much could this save in terms of setup time at meets and conventions?
Okay, so that was the primary reason why I built it, because my setup times were taking me anywhere from half an hour to 45 minutes to get things set up, tested, and verified before we plugged into any of the modules. So this way, I can, when I flip the switch on, it tells me that I have DC power out, that I have DC power out, that everything to the box, through the system is ready to go. So, like I said, being an IT now and being an advanced electronics tech, previously, it was important for me to have this thing just turn it on and let's rock and roll. So once we have all the modules verified that there are no shorts and everything is running well, we plug in, flip the system on, monitor the PM42 output, make sure we don't have any shorts, and we're ready to go.
You mentioned Digitrax briefly there, but did you consider if some version of a Digitrax system would fit into your enclosure or box?
I did, but I would have to create a whole separate system that would be sitting kind of languishing, I guess, for most of the year, because my club is an NCE club.
Okay.
So everything we do is NCE DCC, whether it's HO T-Track or it's HO layout guys or it's the T-Track N-scale T-Track or the N-scale modular traveling layout. It's all they're all NCE systems, so that's why I built it around the NCE system.
How many iterations were there until you had the final version?
Yeah, I don't think the iterations ever stopped, to tell you the truth. But I did pull it apart twice to put it back together, just because I didn't like it, or I found something like a routing issue for the wires, or I needed more space so that I didn't have things too clustered and pushed together too hard. So so there were 2 times that I pulled it completely apart and put it back together, but mostly of that was just to rerun wires and for connectivity.
Cool. Someone asked if you'd be willing to provide the bill of materials to build one of these.
So I did provide the and I didn't really mention it. I showed the slide, but back in May, it was published in the Pulse of DCC in the NMRA magazine, in both the electronic and the physical magazine. If somebody wants, and I did link everything out as best I could. However, if someone is interested and they want to know, send me an email to either one of these. I'd be happy to give them a list of parts that I used and give them the links of all the pieces in the system that I use. I do have an article that I wrote, so I'll probably just send them the article that has all the links in it.
So knowing that you have a list, do you have any idea of how much it will cost to build one of these?
So pre-pandemic versus post-pandemic, I'm sure the prices with inflation and everything else have changed. I I would have to go price out some of the stuff that I already owned. I mean, I already owned the entire NCE system. I already owned all the Anderson power pole connections. I already owned a spare DCC meters and what have you. So it's I don't know the total cost what it would be today, but it started to get a little pricey. That's why I had to like start changing things up a little bit.
Okay.
Um, but if you're starting from scratch, it's not going to be super cheap. But the time that you save, the amount of frustration that you save,
Yes,
the reliability that you get, well worth it.
indeed. So why the rigid case? And I guess instead of a Milwaukee backout?
No worries. So what I did was I went to Home Depot and I opened up every case that they had there. And Rigid is a Home Depot product. I understand that now I've since learned that. But as I was going through all the cases and looking, I even went to Harbor Freight and looked at some of theirs. As I looked at all the cases, nothing seemed to like really um, fit all the pieces. Like I knew where I needed to put everything, and I needed to mount the Raspberry Pi behind the lid. I needed to mount the display in the center. I needed to mount the digital voltmeters and what have you in the lid on the right side. So I needed to be able to like pop it off, look inside, and see, how much room I had. The rigid, um, that 22-inch rigid, gave me the most versatility out of everything. Now, that's not to say that there isn't a Milwaukee product that would work,
Correct.
but you just need to be able to get behind that case lid and get in there and route all your wires so that you know, uh, you're not binding up the wires and what have you when you try to put that case lid back on.
Is there room for the cables to slide into, like strain relief
So
or?
there was a little bit of, I had to do a little bit, as I mentioned, I had to do a little bit of trimming. And
Mhm.
all I did is I just cut a few small channels through it. And then I laid the cables up in those channels. And then I used the black sticky zip tie retainers. And I put those along the way and I zip tied them all down so they're all nice and neat inside that cable lid.
Cool. So the big question is, where do you find an affordable Raspberry Pi 4?
Yeah. Well, like I said, pre-pandemic, I had three of them. So trying to find them now. Normally, I can find them on Amazon. Um, Prices post-pandemic have jumped up because of the microcontroller costs and what have you, and they say it's because people were out and there's not everybody there to manufacture the parts and yada yada yada. Um,
We call it
Amazon is where I normally go to get the Raspberry Pi.
the shortage because of bad planning.
Yeah, well, that's the 7 Ps, right?
Yep. So last question.
Hmm?
Sorry, second last question. Does your club have two of these so that you can program a locomotive for someone who just showed up, and then everybody else can run their trains? Or
We do. So I built mine, and then I built a second one for the club again because the club had all the parts. So we built a second case, put those put all those together so that we could actually run the other layout. Now, the one thing I probably pushed past it and didn't realize it, but there's a blue and black connector on the back of the case, and I can plug directly into my programming track. So I can switch to programming very quickly and program off the main and program program it on that accessory track. I bring
cool.
that accessory track with me everywhere we go also.
Thank you. Very last question. Where
Hmm?
would you recommend someone learn more about wiring, electronics, and DCC in model railroading?
Hmm. Well, to tell you the truth, A lot of that I have picked up off of YouTube, and I picked up some. Still have some of the Kallenbach books that have DCC wiring and what have you. A combination of those are really good. Also, if you there's a T-Track wiki page that has a lot of the DCC wiring tutorials on it. So if you look at, and it's run by the what's it, North Texas, Vic McTee, North Texas,
Somewhere here in
T-Track.
town.
Yeah. So the teacher, and he has a wiki page up, and it's got a lot of tutorials on it. So if you look up T-Track wiki, it'll pop up, and you can look at the tutorials. You can read through it, and you get a really good idea how how DCC works, and then if you're into T-Track, how and why we wire the models. Excuse me. How and why we wire the modules the way we do. So easy
There's
for me to
also
say.
there's also the brand new beginner's guide on the NMRA website,
Yes.
and the forums are not that well used, but with the new interchange coming, you'd be very happy to ask questions there and get
Right.
flooded with answers.
As soon as we got that thing stood up, that is going to be outstanding. So we've been using the Discord, just testing it, and you'd be surprised. Even right now, we're getting a lot of throughput, a lot of answers, a lot of just the people that are testing it. So I look forward to when that is like fully functional.
So Andy, thank you very, very much. For those who are watching, we also have the breakout rooms. I believe it's wereby.com, and Wereby is WHEREBY.com/OMRG. So Oscar, Mary, Rudolph, George. And it should come up in the slides in between the clinics here. So thank you very, very much. Brad, when you're ready, we can switch over.
Welcome back to NMRAx. We have a lot of great clinics for you today, so make sure to stay tuned for more of those. Our next presenter has been interested in realistic operations ever since he was a teenager, and has spent the last several decades attempting to improve the overall experience of his operating crews on his O&3 ET and WNC Vita Division Railroad. He has done this by providing more prototypical operating procedures, while also replacing plywood and hard shell with realistic scenery and structures. Today, Dean will give us a few swimming lessons and fishing lessons, just in case you need it in a smaller scale. Please welcome from Vida in Missouri, Master Model Railroader Dean Smith. Dean, thank you for being on our show today.
Well, thanks a lot, Jacob. Welcome. Today we're going to jump right in. And I do want to tell everybody that if you're missing it live, you can always stream it later on YouTube. But no, today we're going to look at modeling mountain streams, rivers, and waterfalls. I don't know about anybody else. I've given this clinic quite a few times live. And I always start with asking everybody if to raise their hand if they've ever been intimidated by the S word, meaning scenery. And I know that I certainly was. And for years, I would put it off because it was scary. And I also, a disclaimer right now, I have absolutely no artistic ability whatsoever. I can't draw a stick figure. So, but another thing is that not only am I intimidated by scenery, I'm going to admit it, I am absolutely scared to death of horror movies. I cannot watch them. The classics. I remember one of our first dates with my wife, Sandy. We went to the drive-in, and I mean, I'm a gentleman, but we went to a scary horror movie. I thought maybe, but it was embarrassing. She's just watching the movie, and I'm crawling all over the place. But these movies scare me, and I will admit, I have never even seen any of these movies because they honestly, I mean, I cannot stand it. But and this is my point. The one show on television that scared, intimidated me the most was, worse than any of these ever, was Bob Ross. And my point is because Bob was so intimidating. He could take a 4-inch nylon and a putty knife and it's like he makes these beautiful pictures. And I'm going, I can never do that. The first time I gave this clinic was in Hickory, North Carolina. And Sandy and I, my wife, were at a restaurant with a bar, and I'm not making this up. It was an hour and a half before I had to give this clinic, and we're sitting there eating our supper, and they had a big TV over the bar. And what sports? No. You know what it was? Honest to Pete, it was Bob Ross. And I'm going, oh my God, I can't get away from him. I've since done some reading up on Bob, and a point that I want to make to start with. If you think that Bob would take those things and automatically and magically make a painting in 30 minutes, no, he practiced everything he did. He painted a painting, the exact painting he was going to display. He painted a museum quality of it before he did. And that's one of the things when you're working on scenery, I really, really recommend practice, because you don't want to screw up. And trust me, you screw up. I screwed up a lot, but it's best to screw up on a practice piece. So I built me a piece of it was probably about 3 foot by 2 foot, and I made bluffs, and I had a little place for a river, and I practiced over and over on that until I finally got ready to put it on the railroad. Then, to be honest with you, as we'll talk about later, I still managed to screw up, but at least maybe it was a little bit less than before. So that being said, with the disclaimers out of the way, let's get busy modeling some happy little mountain streams, rivers, and waterfalls. And here's some few examples of some on the Vita division, which is HON3, incidentally, but not a big deal. All right, let's look at the characteristics of mountain, rivers, and streams. First of all, I always say, who is the best scenery builder of all time? Better than anyone. And it happens to be God. So if we want to make a realistic mountain, river, any scenery, it's best to look at what's really there. So if you look at the characteristics of mountain streams and rivers, I'm not talking about big, wide, slow-moving rivers. They are steep gradients. That includes a lot of waterfalls. This is probably the primary characteristic of a mountain stream because it's elevation change. There's a swift flow rate causing rapids and whitewater. Rocky, steep embankments cut into the bedrock. That's what can make them so dangerous. You know, that people drown every year if they're in a slot. If they're in a slot canyon, and and a flood comes, there's nowhere to go. They're relatively straight channels because, again, they're not wandering and meandering. They're heck bent for leather going down the hill. Sharply varying rate of water flow within short periods of time, and that's due to snow melt and rainfall. That's the reason that they can be so variable, and they carry a lot of stuff, so they're capable of transporting large quantities of rock, gravel, soil, and wood, including entire logs, which of course you can easily model those. They're often small, only tens of feet across. I hiked the Appalachian Trail 5 years ago, and I don't know how many thousands of little creeks and streams that I crossed. And usually I didn't even get my feet wet because you could hop across them from rock to rock. Also, you get a lot of sediment. And also, and this is what's fun to model, is a lot of times the water's clear with a visible riverbed, and the soil is easily washed away. You're left with the rock. So the way we'll be modeling these today is that you can actually see to the bottom of the river. Now, of course, with deeper rivers and all that, there's different techniques where you can use paint to paint the bottom. But I wanted to model. Okay, due to variances in the hardness of bedrock, mountain rivers, they flow in steps. Now, water does not flow on an angle. Problem before during one of these, but it's always a little bit of a worry so the internet will cut out. I'm sorry. So tell me just what you need me to do.
As soon as Brad rolls you in, then you start talking.
All right. Should I start over again with the slide with the Nick points? I'm back. Again, when we look at how a river works, a mountain river works, water does not fall at an angle. It doesn't fall, at a 20-degree angle. It looks like visually, it looks like it flows flat and then goes down, goes flat and goes down, and that's because of it cutting through the shallow the strata there. You can see there where it eats down. This makes it much easier to model because we don't have to model a river all at once. we can model we model a section at a time. So and then these photos down below there are courtesy of my friend Greg Olmacher, who you can see that in real life again. How they're not don't have to be big, but you can see there where there's those little nick point breaks, and that's how we're going to model the river. And again, this can be effectively modeled, allowing rivers of any length. I've got a 20-foot, my Doe River on railroad downstairs is over 20 feet long. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to pour 20 feet of product all at once. I'm going to do them one section at a time. Okay, we're also going to look at modeling waterfalls and rapids, both big ones and small ones, because if you're modeling mountain rivers and streams, you're going to probably want to have a waterfall. They're fun and easy to build, and they're pretty dramatic looking. Okay, so let's look what we're going to use. Remember, our best scenery guy is God, and so we're going to, as much as we can, we're going to use natural materials. So we're going to use rocks of various sizes, gravel, sand, talus. In order to establish the riverbed, this is my secret thing here. We're going to use level straight boards and loose change. Now I use dimes, but you could use quarters if you want, though I think dimes would probably be your best bet, but we'll get to how to use those in just a little bit. Okay, we're going to use adhesives. I'm a big fan of Woodland Scenic cement. It's basically, you can make your own. A lot of guys just use, or gals just use white glue. For what I'm doing here, because of the cost, I do use white glue quite a bit, and I dilute it 4-to-1. You're going to need clear silicone, dishwashing soap. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And then with the acrylic paints, this is where you really do get to be Bob Ross. And I'll explain that in a little bit of detail, but you're going to want to use your earth colors, again, that reflect what you're modeling. I use Payne's Gray, Titanium White, Raw Sienna, Raw Umber. And then for cerulean blue, black, and green, we use for the water itself, and a scrap cardboard and some stiff paintbrushes where you get to actually, like I said, pretend you're Bob Ross for a while. Scenic materials, I use talus, dirt, sticks and twigs, ground foam, blended turf, blended green. My favorite of all time is burnt grass. I think the one thing that I recommend when people do this is, as long as you keep your colors muted. I've sometimes some of the colors are just really, really bright, and I just haven't found that those are look as well, because you want things to look kind of muted. I also use the Flock and Turf from Scenic Express. I use the Adirondack color. The other ones are a little dark, but this makes a really neat, quick, down and dirty. Sprinkle that on a scene, and it immediately takes on a realistic, textured look. So I use quite a bit of that. Water products. Okay, I've used Magic Water Resin. Just a word about that. Someone sent me an email a couple weeks ago saying they don't believe it's available anymore. I went online, and the company is Unreal Details, and the site is up, but there's no indication anywhere that it's not available. It can still be ordered. But I did find, unfortunately, that the owner, I found an obituary for him. So Dave Williams, I mean, I worked with Dave a little bit, and was, very helpful to me when I was first using Magic Water. I have plenty saved up, but so I was looking at a replacement, and I've not used it yet, but it seems to me, from looking at the way it works and what's there, the deep pour water clear from Woodland Scenics would be an effective replacement. A lot of guys use Envirotex. I've heard some people love it, and then I've also heard that it tends to brown over age. So I don't know. I've not used that. I have used Realistic Water, and I've not. I don't know. Some people have good luck with it. I did not. I got bubbles. I was to a week before, well, no, about a month before I gave this clinic the first time, and my son came over and he looked at one of my little rivers there, the Little Doe, and he says, "Dad, why are there bubbles in your water?" I said, "Ain't no bubbles in my water." And he looked, and there sure were. I mean, they were anywhere from size small to up to around like a dime in diameter, and I don't know what caused it. I was able to cut it out and pour stuff in, so it works okay. But fortunately, I was able to, before the clinic, because I didn't want to, I wanted something that I had success with. and I used the magic water, and it worked fine. And some of my magic water now is several years old, and it's like I poured it yesterday. So that's going to be your basic material. And then I also use Woodland Scenics water ripples, water waves, water effects, and then to tint, which we'll talk about later. We're not going to do that much, but with the magic water, I use testers, and then with the Woodland Scenics product, the deep water, I would use the Woodland Scenics tints, the navy blue and the turquoise. Okay, so let's create a mountain river. First step is we're going to prepare a riverbed using hard shell foam or other method. I'm a big fan of Sculptamold. That's something else during my clinics. I ask everybody to raise their hand if they use Sculptamold. I love Sculptamold. It's like icing a cake with oatmeal. It is the coolest stuff. But there's other methods. If you're going to use foam, make absolutely sure that it is sealed, because if any foam is going to contact these chemicals, there's going to be a reaction. I usually paint the bottom of the river a flat gray. Make sure there's a slight downhill slope along the riverbed. Okay, it doesn't have to be a lot, but it took about several weeks for my knuckles to end up healing, because when I first poured my Doe River riverbed, I found there was a section about 4 feet long that I actually went uphill on. Water will do a lot of things. It will not flow uphill. So I had to chisel all that out, and I was successful doing it. But just make sure there's a slight downhill slope along the riverbed. Okay, and here's a couple examples of prepared riverbed. Again, I kind of paint it just a dull gray. I throw in the loose talus for the rivers. I've done some, I did an article a few years ago for HO13 Annual, and the river, that's what the river looked like in the photos. And it really looked pretty good. You couldn't really tell there wasn't water product. But at the same time, that's, obviously a temporary look, but it cover until you're ready to do the real thing. Okay, now make sure the riverbed is sealed. This is really important. Extra care goes a long way. These chemicals will find the tiniest little hole. When I gave this clinic in Tacoma, it was so funny. About 10 minutes before we started, it had been raining. It was Tacoma, and a woman in the front row said, "I'm getting dripped on." And we looked up, and it was perfect timing. There was a ceiling drip from the rain through the roof 10 minutes before I began my clinic. So I was able to use my laser pointer, and I said, "See right there. If you don't seal your riverbed, that's what the underside of your railroad is going to look like." Be real careful when you're pouring it. Don't worry, there's a step in here to make sure that you find any leaks before you waste the expensive product. But you can see in that upper picture right here how hard it was for me to finally figure out where that silly thing was leaking. I finally got it sealed. The good thing was I filled it with silicone, and it was fine. The water material goes right on top of the silicone. It's no problem. Of course, I had to peel all those out. And then here you can see right there, you can see a little bubble. And again, that's where you look real closely for those. But again, we're going to find a way to do that where you're going to know whether you have them or not before you actually use the expensive stuff. All right, determine the length of the first river section up to the first rock break. Remember that nick point. And it can vary anywhere from a few inches. The farthest I've gone is about 18 inches. It depends on the terrain. It depends on how, obviously how steep, the grade on your river or your stream. It also depends on the length of your straight board. You measure the slope with a small level and a short board and your loose change. Now, when I gave this clinic one time, I had a hard time explaining this to people, and it was my fault because I wasn't being clear. So I added a couple of pictures here. So what you do is you've got the end of the board at the at the one end at the beginning of where you're going to start, and then you pile those dimes up until it's level. And what that tells you how what your gradient is for that section of the river. Then you measure the height of dimes. This is going to right there help you determine the height of your rock break, because that's what we're going to build next. All right, now there's artistic ability. That's as artistic as I get, guys. Okay, you determine the height of the rock break. You allow for about 1/8 of an inch of water material, because our total pour is going to be about 1/8 of an inch. It's not real critical. And so here you can see the picture where you're going to have this rock layer. This is going to be your rock break. This is the level line from your ruler. There's your measure. So you're going to measure that up and then add about 1/8 of an inch or so to allow for the thickness of the rock layer. All right, now we're going to construct a rock break using actual rocks. All right, you glue these into the riverbed, a thick layer of clear silicone, making sure there's a complete seal. Now that's pretty easy to make sure you do. You just run a good old bead of silicone there. What I found, if I do have a leak, that's usually where I have it. But that's pretty easy to fix. But you glue in the rocks just in order to you know how tall it wants to be. You can see right there where I've got my rock break done. And then you check with your level. See right there, that 1/8 inch piece of masonite, that's for the thickness of the rock. And then I now know that my rock break is at 1/8 of an inch above where I wanted it to be. And again, that's not critical, but that's just it's a good, that's a good to aim for. Okay, now make a dam across the top of the rock using clear silicone. Ready, guys? What did the fish say when it ran into the wall? Damn. Okay, I'm done now. You dam the river at the edge of the fascia with masking tape and stiffening boards. You can see right there at the fascia, or right here. So you just build yourself a dam with silicone. So it's up higher than the rock break. Okay, a little over 1/8 of an inch. Now we're getting ready to start doing the exciting stuff now. Okay, now we place large stones along the riverbed. Remember, that's one thing about mountain rivers. A lot of times that makes it, really visually interesting is there's rocks sticking up out of the top. So you just kind of, you place your stones in kind of where you think they want to be. It's not real critical because again, it's going to be whatever nature made it do. Just kind of make sure they're random or however, and you just place them in there. Now, here's one of my secrets to not wasting material. Then you fill the area with clear water to the desired height of the dam on the rock break. Now, this does a couple things for us. One, it checks for leaks. I pour it in and then I come back and I make sure that none of it has leaked out. If it's leaked out, then you know that you've got a problem and you've discovered that with water, which is pretty cheap. It also... well, we'll tell the other advantage soon, but and this gives you an idea, as you can see there, how your rocks are going to look. So this is also a good time to think, well, I really would like a rock sticking up right there or something like that. So when you're playing with this, it's a good chance you can visualize what it's going to look like before you've committed to anything that's permanent. And then, like I said, I adjust the heights of the rocks, add new ones if desired. I do this sometimes. I'll actually, you can see there, I actually will mark with a pencil where the height of the water is. I don't always do that. That's kind of helps when I'm setting the roadbed after I take the water out. Now, once that's done, then you use an eyedropper, a medicine dropper, and you remove the water. You just suck it out and squirt it into a cup. Now, that's also real helpful because that gives you an idea of how much product you're going to need to use. Because this stuff, like I said, it is not inexpensive. So I use the exact same size cup I'm going to mix my product in, and I just keep squirting that water in, and then that tells me a good idea of how much product I'm going to need. I always add just a little bit because I'd rather have a little much than go, oh my goodness, I don't have enough. But that really does, it's a real help, so you don't have to just guess. Now, okay, when we go back, see, I got an action shot thanks to my wife. There I am gluing rocks with clear silicone. The larger rocks I glue down with silicone. I had somebody ask in clinic one time, is it really important to get this stuff glued down? And it is, and we'll get to why in just a few minutes. But I glue in the major rocks. And then I add smaller rocks, gravel, and sand. Now it's starting to look like a dry riverbed, which is what we want. And you see right there, I just use the different grades, smaller to or bigger to smaller, and get it all in like that. Color is not a big deal at this point. I would probably go with lighter than darker, but we're going to take care of that as well. But you can see right there where I've now established my my riverbed. Now you secure it with dilute white glue. Say that 10 times fast. This may require numerous applications. And again, this is why, and I use white glue for this, 4-to-1 with a drop of detergent. as a wetting agent. I use isopropyl alcohol a lot now for wetting agents when I'm doing scenery and particularly ballast. I don't do it here, and it probably would be okay. But again, I found something that works. I doubt there's anything in the alcohol that might affect the product, but I figure, hey, I've done it this way and it works, so I'm not going to change. And now, and this may take several applications. I've had it take like up to 4. You can see right there where, you see the water the glue. And then if it's too much, I'll like suck it out a little bit. And you do that and you rub your fingers over it until, it's okay if a few rocks move, but we're going to be painting this. So if you don't get it glued down really good, when you start trying to paint it, the rocks are moving, it gums up the paintbrush. So you just want to take your time and make sure everything's glued down. It's going to look completely loose when you're done, but it'll be nice and secure. Okay. And then when all the rocks are secure, now we're being Bob Ross. You dry brush a riverbed with acrylic paints mixed on a piece of cardboard. For my railroad, I use Payne's Gray, titanium white, raw sienna, and raw umber. Again, you're going to base yours on whatever your basic rocks look like, because the rocks are coming from your other scenery. And you can see right there where I've just painted. When I first started doing this, again, I would just kind of make it, I blended it too much. You don't want to overthink it, but you want it to be mottled. You don't want it to be uniform, but just kind of blend in and out. Okay, I aim for a realistic mottled grayish brown that matches the existing scenery. I start with a neutral gray and then warm the colors by adding the browns. This is one of the most important things I've learned in this thing is you go from gray to brown. Do not go from brown to gray. I did that with my Doe River Gorge, and I had it, and it looked good. It just looked a little bit too brown. So I thought, well, I'm going to make it gray. So I added gray, and what you get is, you don't get gray, you get darker brown. I ended up repainting the entire gorge, started over with white gesso, again, based on my good friend Bob Ross, and then started completely over again. So you go from gray to brown. Full disclosure, these next couple of steps I got from a wonderful DVD. If you get a chance to see, get it, Building Waterways on Your Model Railroad by Dave Frary and Bob Hayden. It's a great resource. Okay, now once it's dry, now water is not blue. The reason it looks blue, of course, is because it reflects the sky. So we're going to want to freck that a little bit. Now what I do, the further I get away from the fascia, the bluer I'll allow things to be. Because again, when you're looking straight down, you're not getting much reflection. So after the paint is dry, flow a thin wash of cerulean blue and black green acrylic paint along the bottom of the riverbed. It's thin. You can see right there where I did it. Now, and again, I've already mentioned, further from the aisle, the darker it can be. Now, when that's done, then I touch up the tops of the rocks, again, by dry brushing with those gray and brown paints, because you want that bluish wash to be below water level. Again, keep it subtle. Okay, now, remember, rivers and streams, they move stuff. So we're going to add small twigs and sticks along the edge of the river. And of course, these can also be extended into the river itself. That always makes for a nice little visual, when you've got the log laying in the river. And then we glue those down. Now, we're going to mix and pour the whatever resin we're using. Follow the directions carefully. I know it said stir for 5 minutes, stop, and stir for 5 minutes more. Do that, because if it's not completely mixed, then you're going to have soft spots. I use a plastic fork that I cut the bottom of the fork off flat so I can get into every nook and cranny. Now, if you want to tint it a little bit, and I do, but make sure that you go very, very light on the tint. That's my second big thing to say. If you tint too much, it's not going to look good. And if a friend of mine, he decided his first pour was just a little bit too amber. So he tried a second pour and he put more blue in it. Well, yellow and blue make green. So his river looked very, very green. Fortunately, this good friend of mine is a great modeler. He was able to fix that, but by making it brown. He lost the ability to see at the bottom, but it still looked good. But err on the side of not much tint, because if it looks colored, then you're not going to get the effect that you want. All right. Now the product you're using is going to pour into the nooks and crannies. I use a little brush or a toothpick, and then this is a fun with magic water. It was just amazing. Just use a straw and blow on it, and the bubbles go right out. I believe I read the directions on the Woodland Scenics Deepwater. They said you can use a hair dryer. Of course, that's going to give heat, but not as much carbon dioxide. But somebody said, "Well, have you used a blowtorch?" No. I mean, if you want to have a blowtorch going around your water, you go for it. But I have not found any reason to do that, and this has worked really well. So you get the bubbles out, and then you let it set. Now, usually most times I only have to do one pour because we're modeling, shallow rivers, but you can add more pours. I never go more than about 1/8 of an inch at a time. But what you do is you want to pour your water until you're 1/8 of an inch above the top of the rock break. Okay. And you got that dam stopping it. So you've got water up along the rock break. Okay. And once it's completely set, then you take the dam off. Okay. If there's a little lip, which there might be, you carve that off real carefully with a razor blade or a knife. You can see real clear there. It's not exactly focused right there, what we're talking about. And then right along there. See, it's frozen. Okay, you've got water that's hitting that rock break, but it's not going anywhere yet. Okay, so what do we do next? All right, we're going to add final scenic details around the river, small gravel, talus, dirt. I've never had any problems with the magic water creeping up. I've heard that there's a problem with resins like that. This solves that problem if it is, because you're going to work this out right down to the edge of the water. And then I carefully wet these areas with the wet water, apply scenic cement, and then you can wipe off any scenic cement that gets on the river surface, but you don't have to worry too much because we got steps that are going to cover that as well. Okay, now we're going to start making. Right now it looks good, but it's flat. So now we're going to start having some fun. We're going to use. I use the water ripples, which is a thinner product, using a soft brush, and this is just to make it look so it's moving a little bit, so it's undulating, and I just happily put it on there with a brush. You can see the effect right there. And then once that looks good, I allow that to dry, and then I go to the next step, which is to repeat the above step with the water waves, Woodland Scenics water waves, which is a thicker product. Now you start to think a little bit, because as the water flows, it's going to pile up behind rocks, and it's going to swirl around there like that. So now you see them kind of bubble up right there a little bit because it's in that pocket. All right, you can use a stiffer brush to do this. What I do is I use a camera a lot, because when I think it looks good, and I start taking pictures of it, and you can see, oh, this area looks like it's just a big round blob with nothing in it, and just keep working on that. It's a lot of fun. It's not at all difficult. And then so you see there where the ripples. If you want even more rough water, you can use water effects, which we'll use for other things, but that's the thickest of the materials we're going to use. Now we're going to mix a small amount of titanium white to a dab of water waves, and this is where we're going to do our white water. This is how we're going to do our turbulent areas where it's bubbling over things. And then you work that in there and all that. Now, the last step, and this will be very, very subtle with this, is what I do is I very lightly dry brush the surface of the river with that mix of titanium white and waves. But you don't want, if it looks like there's streaks in it, it looks like, oh, somebody painted white on the river to make it look like water. You just want to touch the top of those ripples so it looks like the sun hits them. If you put on too much, it's easy to fix, either to lick your finger and wipe it off, or get a damp paper towel and then try again. You've got time until it dries, so it's not critical, but that's a real nice little extra touch to give a feeling for movement. Then what do? Okay, wash, rinse, and repeat. Start over. Go to the end of your rock break and build another one, just exactly like you just did, using the base of the rock break you just finished, or using it for the base of the next one. Then once that's done, then you model the drop-offs. The smaller ones can be done with water effects. You just glop it on, make it look like it's flowing down. And then again, you just paint the turbulence, and right there, you can see right there where I did that right there. and right back in there. So that's how you transition from one nick point, one rock break to the next, and you just keep going. Now, for larger drop-offs, you might want something a little more fun, a little more picturesque, and you can do a little see-through waterfalls. And what I do there, you can see there where I made a paper pattern, and then I take the water effects, and I use this is wax paper. I usually use a Ziploc bag. You streak it on there. You like take a popsicle stick and a flat popsicle stick, and you make it look like, you put things. Make sure they go straight down. Water only flows straight down. Then you use your template to put them in there, and then you glue those in with little water effects. So that makes it look like you've got a little waterfall, and it's kind of cool because you can do that so you can actually see behind it. So it looks like the water is flowing. Because once it's in place, then again, you just streak the water, you streak it with water waves, and then you do the same exact step with your water waves and your titanium white. And then when it's done, dry brush with a little more titanium white. You can see right there where you've got that spot where you can see behind. Makes it look like a little waterfall. And you just keep going until it's complete. So I've got rivers on my layout that range from a few feet to 22 actual feet. And I just build them one step at a time. They're not all done yet, but we're getting there. Okay, here's some pictures of some completed scenes. There's the little doe underneath at Hampton. There's the doe on the right that is underneath the bridge between Johnson City and Hampton. There you can see there where the water hits that bluff right there and then bubbles down under there and goes under the bridge. You can see here's a little fishing stream there. And that right there is that area where I had the real bad leak, but it turned it out looking good. This is my first to do, and it's always great because you can't really see it. You got to stand up on a step ladder to see that. So it's kind of neat to have my first area to model that you couldn't see anyway. So that way, even after my practice, I was able to try and say, yeah, this looks good. I'm going to be okay. And again, there's that one scene with the water hitting there and bubbling as it makes its turn. And then again, there's, of course, is underneath the one bridge. Of course, it was not complete without a dad and his son fishing. And then here's in the Doe River headed into Cranberry. You can see again there where the Doe River goes across the railroad, crosses it with that bridge. Making a waterfall. Okay, what's an Appalachian model without a still? Still, I'm a home brewer as well. Still requires water. So I've got there where I built that little woodland scenic still kit. I bought it when I was a kid. Bought it when I was 16, built it when I was 60. But you can see here where I was planning on putting in a waterfall. I was originally just going to put in something just kind of grown over, and I thought, well, let's have some fun with it instead. So I made the base of the waterfall with rocks, plaster rocks, built in with the Sculptamold, painted it, applied the scenic texture. Basically, again, you see there where the waterfall is going to be. You can see right through there. You can't really hardly see that area at all. So I just built that with a little bit of water effects. The big thing you see, of course, is you don't want the still to be very visible, obviously, because it's a still. And then there you can see where the same thing, I used the Ziploc bag and the water effects to make the pieces of the waterfall, built them in, cut them in, glued them in, dabbed and streaked the water effects on to make the waterfall. And then again, the white water and the turbulence with the water waves and the titanium white, and then drying brush a final coat of straight titanium white on it. And there you have a waterfall. Here you can see in the distance, you can see there's the still waterfall there, and then it flows into a pool. You can actually see through that culvert. There's a coyote getting a drink on the other side. And then this flows, and then right here underneath there, we can't see it. It's not in the photograph, but that's where the Doe River is. So that's it. Okay, so long, and thanks for all the fish. I'm sorry about the delay that was caused by my countrified email. My contact information is on this slide. Again, I do have a digital handout for this clinic. It is available upon request. It's 3 pages and it goes through step by step. So if you're interested in the handout, if you just shoot me an email at smith5@embarkmail.com, I will gladly send you an attachment with that. And other than that, I think, how'd I do? Yeah, I'm a minute early. Okay, I think I've got it. So I guess Jacob, Speed, I'll open it up to questions if anybody's got anything they want to ask me. So anybody there?
Hello, Dean.
Hi, good, you're there. Whew, I was afraid I've been talking to myself for the last 25 minutes.
So do you have any tips for modeling dry Nambian riverbeds or just dry riverbeds in general?
Yeah, well, I would pretty much go along that same route, except stop before you get the water. You're going to want them to look, you're going to want them to blend, to look like the color of the rock they came from. Again, I would make sure that I'd stay, muted with the colors. There's going to be it depends on what, how often water flows in it, so there's not going to be a lot of living material in them, I wouldn't think. But, it'd be a lot of fun because you could even model like an area where a brush has been, pushed up against it from, a flood earlier. That's pretty much the way I would model that. Kind of just do what I do until you start adding the water to it, I think.
Nice.
One thing I do want to add, because I'm getting ready to model my sawmill, and it's a different kind of water, but you always got to look at what water's going to do, because when I model that, it's brackish, it's nasty. I've seen some, it was a beautiful model, but you could see down into the water of the sawmill pond, and you wouldn't be able to see that because that water's gross. So my one challenge I want to have is, because that water is going to come off. I haven't modeled this yet, but it's going to come off a splash dam. So I want to model the nasty water thinning back out, like narrowing down as the water cleans up as it gets closer to the fascia board. So,
that's cool.
Yeah, I'm excited. Haven't done it yet, but I'm excited.
One more
caveat. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
What is the deep pour water made of?
I looked, and it didn't have like ingredients on it. It's an epoxy resin, just like Magic Water is, just like Envirotex is. The difference is, the reason I think it's more like Magic Water is Envirotex, if I'm not mistaken, you pour 50-50 A and B. With Magic Water and with the deep pour, you don't. The hardeners. I think the hardener is a smaller amount. I haven't used it. I've talked to some people that have had good luck with it. Again, I hope I have enough Magic Water saved up. It's a tragedy about poor Dave. I don't know if someone's going to pick up the company or start modeling it again or marketing it again or not. If you can get your hands on Magic Water, I can tell you right now, I love it. It's the best material I've found going. It's odd though. I mean, you can still order it. But I haven't heard back on that, and I've emailed and I've called, and I haven't heard anything back at all. So I'm just wondering, maybe his family isn't dealing with personal issues and just let the business, because it was a one-person business. So, but no, I don't have I looked, I don't have a, like, it's made out of this or that, but it's an epoxy resin. It is what it is. The realistic water is a one pour. You just pour it, and I read somewhere that it reacts poorly with PVA glue, which is more common in Europe. I think it's white glue, and I use a lot of white glue. So I'm wondering if maybe that is what caused that bubbling to occur. Again, I love Woodland Scenics products. I just won't use realistic water. I've got some people. One guy, the last time I gave a clinic, said, "Well, I poured some, a month ago, and it looks great." And I said, "Well, please contact me in 3 or 4 months, because it looked great on mine until, like I said, it was about, I'd poured it about 3 months before, and then these bubbles just occurred in it." So I would stick with the 2-pour resins.
Nice. How expensive are these water products?
No, they're not cheap. I haven't priced it lately. But again, a good thing with the method I'm trying to do is it doesn't require a whole lot of product, because you're only pouring about 1/8 of an inch. I could look it up. I mean, anybody could look it up, but it's not cheap. I mean, I'm going to guess maybe, shoot, I wish I'd checked. But you go to Woodland Scenics and look and see. Now the tints last forever. The water waves and the water ripples and the water effects, they last a really long time. So the big expense would be the resins themselves. But you know, it's not exorbitant. I mean, I'm thinking, I want to guess maybe $20-$25 maybe for their biggest size pour package. So I just something like that. And people ask me how much I spend on my model railroad, and I mean, I don't spend a whole lot, but I never keep track because that just would detract from the fun for me. So yeah, so.
That's probably a better idea.
Yeah. I asked for it for Christmas. It's Santa Claus to give it to you. That's what I do.
Could you model fish or other marine wildlife in the water?
I have done that. I should include that in my clinic. Yeah, I did. In fact, you can't really see them in this photograph, but if you look right there and right there, those are fish. And the way I did that was I used little pieces of aluminum foil and cut them out into like fish shape. And then I did one pour, and then I embedded the little fishies in there, and then carefully poured the other pour on top of them. So absolutely, I should add that to my clinic. Yes, you can easily do that. Yeah, there's one right there. So keep that. You're not going to be able to. It's kind of fun because you can look forever and not see them, but they're there. That's something you would want close to your fascia board. But yeah, so you can. Great question.
And on a similar note, could you potentially add algae or plant life to the bottom of your river?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I would think, you could do one with paint, which probably would be the easiest way. But no, I would, if I were to do that, I would use, I would use, what I would think I would do, again, I'm just thinking, because I haven't done this, is I would use like a fine, ground foam. I wouldn't use the bushy kind of stuff because you don't want to capture anything in it. And then I would probably put it in, and then I'd seal it. I think I'd seal it first because just in case if something about that material might cause a bubbling effect or anything like that. But yeah, that'd be fun. I would. If somebody does that, email me and send me some pictures. I'll give that a try. Absolutely. Then it would really look cool because you see it through the water. Yeah.
Have you ever submerged plastic models into your water?
I have not. There are. I don't have like boats or anything like that in my rivers. There's two ways to do that. I mean, the one way is to just cut it off and put it at the bottom. And the other way would be, I guess you could. Yeah, I don't know why you couldn't do that. If you'd have to like secure it, maybe with a couple of pins or something, so it's a little bit off the water. Pour it around it, and then if it's like styrene, you could probably pop it back out and then finish modeling and then set it in. Similar to that, I have decided, again, because I'm a little afraid of having organic material in it, when I do my sawmill, because it's all ready to go now, I'm using logs that I'm using, instead of submerging the logs down into the river, I've got them cut and they're going to sit on top. I'm going to glue them, and then I'm going to work in with the water effects, up a little lap, just a little bit along there. And again, because you can't see through the water because it's just a brackish, nasty, stinking mess because of the fact there's logs floating in it all the time. You wouldn't be able to see underneath. So I'll be doing that. But yeah, I don't know why you couldn't. Great idea.
Do these have a smell to them?
No, they do not. That's the one thing, the old resins that generated heat. I've never used those. One of the things they always say with the advantage to those as opposed to the Envirotex or the resins is they can cure with a rippled effect. I don't want that. I want to control my rippled effect. So I like the fact that it's smooth, clear when it's done, and so then I can add the ripples and can control where they are. I mean, that's just me. I've had one person I've never had a problem with it because I know the realistic water never really completely sets up, and I could see where that would be a problem. I've never had a problem with with using the other products on top of the resin. I know some people have recommended it. Certainly wouldn't hurt maybe to seal it with a coat of like clear polyurethane varnish. I've never done that. They still look fine. I just take a damp cloth every once in a while and wipe it off, and then and every once in a while, like with my waterfall, I did this a few months ago. I'll just mix up a little more titanium white and just paint over it again a little bit. But no, there's no objectionable smell at all.
And when you're doing the waterfall, what is the best material and way to model the overspray, the foam that comes out at the bottom?
Okay, what I've done, there's a couple ways to do that. I pretty much found, I was happy, again, it's down below, it's kind of hard to see, just using, instead of just using titanium white paint, I mix the paint in with either with the water waves for the river, or you can mix in with the water effects as well, because that's the thicker stuff. And you can pull those up with a brush. So it looks, it looks turbulent. I know some people have used cotton. I have not tried that. I suppose that would work. You'd have to be really, really careful, I would think, to not overdo it, because again, it's not that a big a deal. But I would think either of those two. You want to get some some texture to it. So yeah, that would be what I did. When on my waterfall, I used just the water effects at the bottom, because again, I was able dab it in and then pull it up. So I've got the it looks like the froth. As far as the spray is concerned, I think probably maybe really pull out some cotton real thin. I'm thinking maybe the same kind of foam that you would use for foam tree, foam ball, puffball trees, that puffy material. Although you might have trouble with the color for that. You'd have to paint it. That might work. I mean, it'd be something to try. I'm all excited, boy, and people trying new things. You got my email. Please let me know what you're doing, because it's turned out been really, really fun for me. And again, I put off water so long because I was afraid to try it, and I really enjoyed it. So yeah, I'd love to have people let me know what they're doing and send me more ideas. So this is just my way of doing it. There's lots of ways to do it. This is not the right way to do it. This is the way I do it. So.
Well, I think that's all of our questions. So
Right.
if you have any more questions for Dean and his expertise on water, then you can go to werribee.com/OMRG and ask him the questions yourself.
All right, I'll try to get on. Hopefully, we won't have any more internet problems. And again, just that my handout is I'd love to see it. It spells it out step by step. So if you're interested in that, just shoot me an email.
Thanks for being with us today, Dean.
Hey, absolutely, Jake. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it, my friend.
Me too.
Bye-bye.
Hey, this is Tony Cook, the managing editor of Diesel Era magazine. And if you're enjoying the content on the NMRAx, be sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and remember to ding the little bell icon so you'll get updates when there's new information.
Welcome back to NMRAx. Our next presenter began developing modules when he became interested in the California South Coast ON30 modular group in 2012. He has built several detailed modules that have been presented in the ON30 annual magazine. His clinic is an exploration of what it means to build in a modular format and covers several how-to tips for developing detailed modular scenes. Please welcome our next clinician from the LA area, Kevin Spady. Kevin, thank you for being with us.
You're very welcome. Happy to be here. Hi, everybody. This is probably a 45-minute presentation that's cut down from my normal hour-plus presentation, but it will guide you through my experiences in modular railroading. I got interested in this, as Jacob said, in about 2012, and just happened to attend a train show that had modular groups set up. And so I decided to engage it and have really had a lot of fun over the last 10 years in building modules. So what we're going to do today, what we'll cover today is really kind of a little mini how-to on modular railroading. So what modular railroading is, why would you do it, what a module is, a little bit about building and constructing and designing modules. And then I'll take you on a little exploration, evolution of the very first modules I ever built, and then walk you through what I actually enjoy most about model railroading, which is detailing and detailing your layout, your module, whatever. So why do it? A lot of people who really love model railroading don't have the ability to do a layout in their home, and I'm one of those folks. So this gives me the opportunity to really build models, do model railroading, um, work with other model railroaders. One of the really cool things about modular railroading is you work with other people. You're not just sitting in your basement all alone doing a layout. Um, it's easier to finish something holistically than starting with a basement that is empty and really requires an extensive amount of time to complete. It allows you to do some very advanced detailing very quickly and actually can be attached to your home layout. Um, One of the things that I actually really love about modular railroading is going to shows and having kids be able to get involved. A child, a teenager can build a module, link up with a modular group, and be part of the experience. And it's not just young kids, it's old kids too. So, what is a module? Um, it's a transportable element any particular size, 2x2 and up. You can see some of the configurations on the right of your screen. It has to be based on standards, and really those standards allow you to link up to uh, other modules that other people build. You have no control over what happens at that juncture unless there are standards. So our California South Coast group is working under a set of standards that really is probably used by most of the modular groups in California. Um, the key part of that is the interface plate. And the interface plate is a standard. It's always the same. It allows us to bolt modules together and to have consistency in where our tracks align, et cetera. You can see in the upper right of the screen, there's a 6-inch dimension to the main line that runs through all of our modules. Everything else is whatever you would like to do with your module. We also have a standard, we use NCE as our control and resource, although some of us have been going to Bluetooth and other systems as well that can work at the same time that the NCE system is also working. So this is a little bit about what it means to do modular layouts. We go to train shows. We connect all of our modules together in pretty much a free-form arrangement. Um, it, it's not the same every time, I guess is the best way to put it, depending on who can come, who, sometimes we're 20 modules, sometimes we're 60 modules. It just depends on the commitment of time and energy. What you see in front of you on the screen there are the modules that I have built. The names of them are you'll see pop up periodically in this presentation. But they are O scale. We are O scale. So everything you see here is centered on O scale um, design and layout. What you see on the left there is what usually when we arrive at a show is an empty hall. We bring our modules in trailers and set up. Takes us about 6 hours to set everything up, about 4 hours to take everything down. This image is the 2013 National Narrow Gauge Convention. We had 6 groups, 66 modules, 2 staging yards. Took about 20 to 30 minutes to go from end to end. Um, Modules came from all over the country: Pacific Northwest, Florida, Texas. We had 2 groups from California. Was quite an amazing experience, really a lot of fun. And part of the fun is just bringing all these disparate people with different perspectives together and being able to run trains together. So what does it mean to build a module? The modules themselves are relatively simple the way we build them. There's a variety of different ways to build modules, and this is the standard for our group. We have a pine frame with a XPS extruded polystyrene top on it. That top is the basis upon which we build all of our scenery and everything else. Everything's glued and screwed together. We do have a Luan fascia on both sides. One of the criteria for our group is that there is no backdrop. There are no um, plexiglass screens. Everybody can come right up to the edge of the module and um, look at what's there. These are some of the basic materials: dimensional pine, this extruded styrene, as I mentioned. Um, Really important that you have foam compatible construction adhesive. A lot of times people will use solvent-based adhesives, which melts the foam. Not a good scene. The redwood balusters are for the legs with T-nut feet. You can see those on the right of your screen. Those are used to level. We are seldom in buildings that have level floors. So one of the things that's really important is to be able to level the entire layout using the T-nut feet. And then we also put a cloth skirt around the entire layout just for visual cleanliness. I'm sure most of you have tools. Everybody has tools, right? It does take a lot of tools to build this. One of the tools that I really like is the laminate router you see in the upper right of your screen. That allows me to contour fascias to whatever scenery I want without a lot of work. It's very easy to run the router around the plywood and align it with the scenery. And always, 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 you can never have enough clamps. I probably have twice this many. Um, Track standards. We do have some standards for our track. We use Pico ON30, Code 100 Flex Track, Pico switches. We use tortoise motors or manual modified single pull, single throw switches, which is what you see on the right. This is the switch out of the box, and this is what it looks like after it's modified and placed on my layout. I cut the top off, put an indicator on the top of it, solder it in, and then that also routes power to the frog. A little bit about power. I won't spend a lot of time on this. You can probably see it on the presentation after the fact, or you can talk to me in the breakout room. But very simple electrical setup. Some of them get more uh, uh, get more complicated than others, depending on what you're trying to do with your track. But basically, we have connectors that connect each module to the next module, power routes through the entire layout. Then, and we have a short circuit protector also in each module, so we can find out if there's a short within a module. We can find it very easily when the bulb lights up. We are DCC, so we also link each module, all the modules together with our DCC, and using the RJ45 or connectors. They are also the connectors that link us to our cabs. And this is one of my modules, just to kind of give you an idea of the main power bus that runs through the data connections, the links to the adjacent module I was talking about. You can see those here with the data link and the power link. And that's highlighted in yellow there. Electrical material list. We'll get out of this technical stuff here in a minute into something a little more fun. But we use 16 gauge copper stranded for the main power bus, 20-24 gauge for switch drops. A lot of screw terminal strips, Molex or Fillmore 5-pin connectors or power pole connectors to link the two or link the modules together. I mentioned the RJ45s, and we're all Cat5 or Cat6 cable on our data cables. A lot of my modules have lighting effects. I also do a little bit of fun with switches that I can't reach easily from the front of the layout, having LED indicators as to whether you're on the main or on the siding. And as I mentioned, I have some dead rail. I'm a proponent of dead rail, although I don't. That's not the majority of my work. Um, this mogul is a dead rail logo with the batteries and the control boards in the tender. So sometimes you don't need all that electrical stuff. You can run a train. We have instances where we have a difficulty on the layout, and the dead rail guys are still running around while we're trying to figure out what's going on with the electrical system on the layout. So really quick, building a module, no magic to laying track. We lay track directly on the foam. You need a few tools for that: putty knife, panel adhesive. Again, important that it's foam compatible. I use a lot of buckets of paint, heavy weights, etc., to hold the track down as it's curing. And I do solder all my track together within the module. So now something a little more fun. Designing your module. Things to consider: era, theme, location, operational realism. These are all things that in some respects need to be either agreed to by your group, or at least within the context of a module or group of modules that you want to build. We're all centered around the 1920s, 1930s, so you won't see any diesel on our layouts. Our theme is, my theme is kind of Pacific Northwest. You'll see a variety of different regional themes within the layouts. You might find a Pacific Northwest themed module up against a desert theme module in some instances. Location, that's of some importance but lesser. And operational realism, we've just kind of stuck our big toe into operations. It's a little difficult with an ever-changing layout to be very effective with operations on a show-by-show basis. So I start with sketches, literally doodles. I mean, I'll be at work, I'll sit down at lunchtime and just throw out some ideas. This is the Pudding River Lumber Company module. This is the very first drawing I ever did of what I thought that would look like. You can see the image below, what it ended up looking like. Just trying to get ideas out on paper so that I can uh, uh, take those and build them and develop them. I use a variety of different programs. I use SketchUp just to sometimes block things out and then sketch over it. Again, just a lunchtime doodle of a thought for a corner module, and then in the upper right, what it ended up looking like. But you can see I'm thinking about where things are going to go, what kinds of industries or uh, scenery I want to see on any given module. As I get into buildings, I do sketches. A lot of my buildings are scratch built, not all of them, but many of them. Um, and I'll do sketches, just trying to figure out what I want it to look like, how I want it to develop on the layout. You can see on the right the little shed that's next to the dock, and on the left is the sketch that I did of it. This is a Shelter Cove module. These are two modules that work together as one. Again, just a concept sketch down below, and then what it ended up looking like up above. And again, getting into some of the details. What's the dock going to be like? How's it going to work? And you'll see that the sketches don't match the images because they evolved over time. I do a lot of mock-ups. As you noted in that earlier image, the lighthouse was on the right in the sketch. I ultimately moved it over to the left, just mocking things up and trying to figure out how it's going to look before I actually start building anything. And that's what it ended up looking like. So you go from a real simple mock-up to a pretty elaborate scene. So I'm going to take you on a little trip. The very first modules that I ever built. This is the interior of the engine house that I showed you earlier on the Pudding River Lumber Company module. Again, it's a two module layout. You can see the split in half there with the engine house on one side and kind of a detail repair shed and other things on the left side. In 2012, this is where I started. The image on the left is in my basement. I had the track laid out. I had it kind of figured out how I wanted to arrange everything. Had gotten the trestle in place and really could run a train on the track. On the right is the very first show. We don't mind taking works in progress to shows because it does show people what how a module evolves over time and what it takes to build it. So, I got a little bit farther in at that point in the very first show I went to. The next year, this is pretty much how it had developed. Um, Pretty much done with the exception of the water. At first, I was just terrified of doing water. Um, After having done it, found out that it's a lot easier than it looks or sounds like, and I've had a lot of success with it. And this is a widescreen view of those two modules. Um, but you can see that's a 2-year effort in those two modules, not only because I'm slow builder, but also because that was the very first modules I had ever done and was just kind of learning as I went along. So now a little trip down, I guess some of the things that I find really most interesting about um, designing and building modular railroads is really making them as realistic as I possibly can. I spend a huge amount of time um, detailing my modules, and that's one of the things I really like about modular railroading is you have a very small space that you can do a lot in, and you're not burdened by the idea that hey, I've got a whole basement full of layout that I really want to make realistic, but I'll never finish it in my lifetime. So I want to show you some ideas, I guess, or some vignettes of my layouts. Um, really going, really focusing on people, stuff, equipment, abandoned things. Talk a bit about landscaping, vehicles, and lighting. I try to light most of my buildings. As you can see, this is the interior of the engine house again with, with its lights and detail. So people, I put a lot of people on my layouts. I think it brings them to life. It becomes something that feels more real to me. The images or figures that you see on the screen right now on the upper right are all figures in the Shelter Cove module. That's, I don't know, there's 30 some figures there in that 8-foot space, and it really helps to bring the scene to life. In the lower right is how I paint. I really learned a lot from Dave Revelia in terms of how to paint figures, and I use the corks out of champagne bottles or wine corks and pin the figure uh, to that, and while I'm painting it, it allows me to rotate around, hold it in my hand easily, and really get into some of the detail on the figures. The lower left is the two fishermen on the Shelter Cove module. The fish are just um, cutouts in paper with epoxy blobbed on the top of it to give them some form and shape, and then painted. So those are all custom done. I really believe in landscaping your modules. It takes a lot of time and a lot of thought, but it really, again, brings your module to life. I do a lot of trees. Um, in the upper left, those are ferns that I developed using feathers. And you just take a blob of hot glue, get some feathers, rotate them between your fingers, put a blob of hot glue on the bottom, and stick them on a tin pan. One of the really cool things is if when we're at a show and they happen to open one of the big sliding doors that you see over here during a show, um, those feathers actually blow in the breeze and it really animates your module. The stump that you see, that's a manufactured product. And I use Durham's wood putty to really extend the roots out, and that actually sits on a slope. So really wanted the stump to really fit into the slope, and that's what you see here in the center. I really, really, really am a believer in things fitting into the landscape and not sitting on top of it. Um, just some weathered trees. I'll go a little bit into how I do this in the next slide, but these were just some windblown seacoast kind of conifers that I go out in the desert and grab some sagebrush, bring it in, um, put a structure on top of it, and then use ground foam to build the body of the tree. And then conifers. I do a lot of conifers, again, Pacific Northwest, right? A lot of trees. I use cast resin trunks, usually some dowels. I happen to get a whole box of trunks from Andrew at Grand Central Gems before he passed away, and that's what I use for my trees. Um, I paint them, add the dead limbs to the bottom, and put on a product. It's a Duralast natural fiber filter that's cut out in a star shape, and I just drop them on the trunk, cut them into shape as you can see here, paint, and then use two colors of ground foam, a really dark ground foam, Woodland Scenics ground foam on the underside, and a lighter ground foam on the top side of the trees. And it makes a pretty effective um, conifer tree. Here you can see some of that in place on the module. I think that, variety is the spice of life. All my trees aren't the same height. There's some dead ones. There's some different colored ones. They all bring that variety really makes your modules sing. Um, the little bushes that you see at the bottom here are really um, just sponge material or again, the blue furnace material with ground foam, different colored ground foams sprinkled over the top. And here you can see some of the ferns next to that locomotive that I was talking about before. Rocks, always an important part of your layout. This is a module I built. Um, it was sort of a group effort. A couple people helped build some of the trestle, and I did most of the landscape rocks and set it all up, painted it, etc. Um, the round rocks are made out of a high density foam. It's a foam that they use for movie sets and things like that. Just chopped it up into blocks, carved it, and this was really intended to mimic the Carrizo Gorge area where there's a lot of exposed boulders like this. And then the bla- blasted surface is a Bragdon rock mold in place. Not easy to paint. There's a multi-step process to paint these things. I start with a gesso cover, go over it with a black tempera to create the shadows in all the nooks and crannies, and then color it with washes of acrylic paints. So it's not that it's hard, it's just a multi-step process. And this is probably what you'd see more commonly on a layout. A variety of different materials used. A lot of times it's just dirt on foam. I do go out and collect soil from the area around here, and I grade it using different grades of sieves, everything from almost as fine as talcum powder to, some of the larger stones and things that you see here. But this is dirt, painted plaster, natural stone or natural uh, rock materials that I've used on this particular module. And I mentioned earlier, I really like my elements that are on my layout to sit down in the module. Um, Buildings shouldn't sit on top of the dirt; they sit in the dirt. So what I do is I build my buildings, wrap them in saran wrap, and then bring the soil material up around the building, so that the building is actually sitting in a little cavity, if you will, on the layout. It really helps to make things feel more realistic. And there you can see on the right, on the left, kind of how they sit, and then uh, the finished visual on the right there. This was a lot of fun to do. I did a lot of landscaping on this one, which I really enjoyed doing. Um, it just was a really fun little module to build. There's a little creek that runs through the middle, and I'll get to that in a second, talking about water. So let's talk about details on your layout. Literally scrounge, spend, buy, tear things apart, looking for anything that I can find to detail my layout. I have a lot of purchase parts, a lot of scrounge parts, as I mentioned, a lot of resin castings that are painted. This particular image you can see is of that engine house again. That's a resin casting painted. Um, this tarp is just Kleenex over a block of wood. Simple things like that that can add a lot of character to your layout. And same here. These I try to create scenes within my modules so that as people are walking around looking at it and they come back, they'll see something different literally every time, depending on their point of view or uh, just happen to not see it in the first pass and come back and look at it. But I create these mini scenes. This is a Riverton mercantile scene. It's a little mercantile building that sits next to the dock, and it's got boats and kind of marine debris around it to represent what that industry is. The Herbert Shirley Constructions building is a contractor. And so there's bulldozers and cranes and generators and all kinds of stuff laying around. The steel beams in the lower left of that image are just plastruct beams that I've painted and just glued to the layout. Um, Probably one of the more detailed layouts is the Shelter Cove, or not layouts, module, sorry, is the Shelter Cove module. Um, three fishermen talking, a photographer taking a picture of two guys who've just landed a shark. There's a lady buying fish from the fishmongers that you saw earlier. Excuse me. All these little things uh, really bring your modules to life. And as I said earlier, the really cool thing is you can do an awful lot in a very small space, and it's a lot of fun. I do photograph my modules with backgrounds. You can see the shadow of the lighthouse on this background, um, really for the purposes of publication. I don't. The backgrounds are not on the modules uh, when we're grouped up and displayed. As you saw earlier, you can go in from both sides and look at the modules and the layout from both sides. We let the public go right up to the edge of the modules. More details. I'm just passionate about detailing things. There's a little graveyard on the Boot Hill corner. There's a salvage yard. A lot of these parts and pieces are things that I used to buy watch parts by the bag. Um, there was a period of time where you could find watch parts on eBay really, really easily. So there's a lot of gears and bits and pieces that make really awesome uh, detail parts for your layout. Um, Wood, I take wood, literally a branch, I chop it up into little 3/8 inch long pieces, cut it up, sit at the table, watch TV, and cut it up into pieces. That's all real wood. That's not a casting. So I wanted to talk about water a little bit because it is an important part. Almost all my modules have some kind of water on them. Um, I have been using Magic Water by I think it's Unreal Details. I believe they're out of business now, which is really disappointing because that product was fantastic. It had no smell, no odor, really a good cure time, and was very, very easy to work with. You can see the variety of types of water surfaces that I'm able to achieve. This is just a straight, on the left is just a straight acrylic pour of the Unreal Details Magic Water product. It's tended to be very quiet, very smooth water. The other pictures, like the Riverton Docks picture and the Shelter Cove picture, those have an initial pour of the Magic Water product. And then I go over it with a product called Artist Gloss Gel Medium. It's Liquitex, a variety of manufacturers make it. You can build up wave forms. You can see the little waves here on this Shelter Cove image, or at the back of this stern wheeler. I just take a large sable brush and basically uh, ripple the water. Just use the brush to create ripples on the water, and then I build up. You can build up like half-inch high waves if you want. Um, on your water surface, and it goes down fantastically over the resin substrate and gives quite a bit of depth. When you're looking down on this, you get a lot of depth and detail, and I'll tell you why or how I do that in just a second. Um, the little sloughs, little water features around the on Granny's Corner are the plant materials are planted first usually, and then I pour the resin and let the resin kind of flow in around the base of the plant, so the plants are literally coming out of the water. And this is really how I achieve some degree of depth in the uh, resin, in the visual of the resin. This is an early concept, layout of the Shelter Cove module, but I gradate paint from the light brown to mid brown to literally black, kind of a charcoal black color. Whoops. Charcoal black color that gives you the illusion of depth when you pour the resin over it. If you just paint everything a flat color, you're going to get a flat image. But by varying the paint color, you achieve the illusion of depth. And on the left side is just one of the pours on Shelter or on Riverton, clamping a flexible piece of aluminum across the front to pour against, and then covering it. Very important that you cover the resin pour as you're curing it, so you don't get dust and dirt and speckles and stuff in the resin that you don't want. Another good reason to have lots of clamps. Signs. I usually print signs on photo paper and then sand the back of the sign, most of the paper off, and you just get down to the color image on the back side and make them very thin, then just glue them with white glue onto buildings. Um, some of them are pulled off the internet, like the Mohawk gasoline sign you see here, or the Bull Durham sign. The Detweiler and Sons Growers sign is a printed sign, just using Word. And the Pudding River Lumber Company is actually a decal. I weather everything. All my stuff looks like it's been around for 100 years. You know, you don't see pristine uh, buildings out in the world. They just almost don't exist unless they were painted yesterday. So I do a lot of weathering. I use a rubber cement and um, I use a rubber cement product after I do the base coat of the paint, but before I do the finish coat. And then once I've got the finish coat airbrushed on, I take a rubber cement eraser and just kind of peel that rubber cement off, which allows the base coat to show through the paint and gives you that look of, as you see here, of peeling paint. I also use Bragdon powders a lot. They're really great for creating, dirt along the base of buildings. I do that all around all my buildings. Um, I use it for rust stains, for example, here at the awning supports. You can see that also on the lighthouse. What you see on the left there is what that lighthouse used to look like and what it looks like after I modified it. I basically chopped about 8 inches off the bottom and then just completely redid it. I redid the lantern, redid the railing, and lit it up. I used actually a salt shaker, uh, acrylic salt shaker as a prism inside the lighthouse, and it lights up and flashes. Another one of those lighting techniques you probably saw earlier. Well, I think it'll actually show up here in a minute. Again, the rubber cement technique on the left, you can see it here on this building. This is the Herbert Shirley building, and then on this derelict uh, passenger car that is being used as an office. Again, another visual of the Shelter Cove module with the boats with rust and stains, and again, trying to make them as realistic as I can. You can see an interesting contrast between the bright, shiny locomotive that's not been weathered yet and everything else on the layout. Hoping you can see this. This is a couple minute video of the layout as it's was presented on one of the train shows. The bait house is scratch built. The docks are all scratch built. The boats were actually a team effort. We had one of our members cast the hulls, another member built the cabs and did the rigging, and I did all the painting and finished them. I did the rocks you see there are plaster castings. There you can see the lighthouse. I don't know if you can see it flashing or not. Little hobo camp that has a lighted fire. I do a lot of special lighting effects. Just a little orange and red flicker LED that's hooked up to a transformer. This module is not one of my modules, but it's a nice little garden module, little farm module. This is a plastic kit that I've changed and detailed, added docks to it. Again, you can see the interfaces between these modules, but we try to hide them as much as we possibly can. This is the Riverton module with the Herbert Shirley construction site and the Pudding River Lumber Company engine house. Some of my locomotives that are, I use almost all Bachmann or Scratch, I should say kit bashed locomotives. Are all kit bashed in one way or another. Little repair shed. That's the local slough with the fishermen. I'll let this run through a couple times. I think I have time. Yep, we're almost out of time. So I'll just go on here. That is the end of the presentation. And I would open it up for questions.
Okay, so now we are going to go into the questions part of this. And so, what first drew you to ON30 modeling?
Well, for a long time early, when I was much younger, I was into HON3, did a lot of brass collecting, and so I've been interested in trains for years and years and years. I had to get out of it as, families come along and things change. And then as I got older, I found that O scale is a scale I can super detail, and also because I am getting older, my vision isn't quite what it used to be. Um, the larger scale is just easier to work in. So again, I'm into a lot of super detailing, and the larger scale allows me to do that.
Nice. How many models do you have in total?
Well, the if you're asking me how many modules I have 8. I think you saw them in that initial loop at the beginning of the presentation. Um, as far as models, if you're asking me how much rolling stock and locomotives I have, I've never bothered to count. I have them in display cases on the walls in my office. I probably have, I don't know, 300 or something.
Where did you get the figures on your modules?
Oh, variety of sources. And if you search on the internet, a lot of them are just there's some Pricer stuff. There's oh, I can't remember the name of the company. There's the company that is always at shows that has a lot of very good figures. There's Anlin Models that's out of Australia. They have some fantastic figures. I just pick them up wherever I can, to be honest with you. When I see one that looks somewhat realistic, B is reasonably priced, and um, it's just a constant quest, I should say.
And a similar question, where did you get the vehicles for your modules?
Same answer. Because we're at train shows a lot, we're always our group only displays our modules at train shows. So literally those modules sit in a trailer for most of the year. I don't ever see them. I mean, I see them, but only at shows. So the what I do is I walk around the train show, looking in boxes and bins. Sometimes I'll see them online. If there's something really special, I'll buy it online, say through eBay, although I'm finding that eBay is not the best resource anymore. But it's again, you're just constantly looking for the vehicles to Kevin McComber, who has a site on Facebook, has a lot of vehicles. I purchased some through him, and then once I get them, I weather them and sometimes repaint them, weather them, and modify them in some way. There's very little on my layout or my modules that are um, in original form. Still there, Jacob?
Jacob, we lost your audio.
There we go. So at least on one of those modules, we saw a backdrop. We were wondering how you did your backdrop.
The backdrops are purchased. There's a couple different companies that do very good backdrops. What I do is given that these are modules, I will buy the backdrop, cut it to size because my backdrops are only maybe 18 inches tall. Cut it to size, put it on a sheet of masonite, and then just literally, I only use them for photographic purposes to enhance the photo image. I just clamp them to the module and take the pictures. So literally, we never see the backdrops except in a photo presentation of some sort, like you did today.
Yeah. And do you ever find yourself going into too much detail on a module? And at what point do you stop?
There's never too much detail. The world's full of junk. um, yeah, there's a point at which it can get ridiculous, I guess. But again, my goal is to achieve a degree of realism. So I will detail and detail and detail until I feel it feels right to me. Um, it's a very subjective exercise.
Um, and what was the stuff that you used on the top of the water?
It's called Artist Gel Gloss Medium. There's a variety of different versions. Liquitex, Liquitex, I think it is, makes products. You can find them in art supply stores. The important thing is to use the gloss version because there's matte versions and other versions of it. The gloss, it goes on white. When you first put it on, you think, oh my God, what have I done? Because it goes on really as an opaque white product. But as it cures clear. And so you literally can see through it, just like the resin, the resin that is underneath it.
Cool. And do you hand lay your track?
Not on the modules. I would hand lay track if when and if I get to a home layout. Um, the reason I don't, or we don't, I guess, is because um, we use Pico Code 100 ON30 track. Is specifically designed for ON30. It has a very backwoods look to it. The ties are all, contorted and not standard. But the product is really robust. It's well made. It flexes it's flex track, so it flexes very well into curves and so on. But the real reason is it's just strong, and the second reason, we always have consistency that way. So we don't have code 83 hand laid running into code 100, um, manufactured track. Everything is the same. I think on a couple of the modules, some of the guys have done like on their sidings or some of their secondary track, they've gone to, I think, code 83 or something to give it a little more siding type of or lightweight track feel. But by and large, we just use the code 100 flux track.
Very nice. With resin water pours, do you ever get creep on the edges?
Yeah, a little bit. I don't know if you can. Do you still see my screen? Can you still see the
Yes.
image?
Yes.
So you can on the image right here, you can see a little bit of creep. But one of the things about the Unreal Details water that I really liked is it didn't creep a lot. And I tend to make I tend to design in such a way that if it does creep, it doesn't really matter a lot. Like here's some creep along the rock wall, but it just looks like the rock wall is weeping, So if you're going to put it up against something that's really pristine and hard, it will creep. Any resin will creep.
And this kind of ties into it on other examples. Do you have any way to prevent it, or do you just try and disguise it with scenery?
The latter, I disguise it with scenery. I mean, I will sometimes bring I don't think I have any examples of that. Well, you can see here, the dock covers the edges all around here. The dock covers the edges here. This is all disguised by landscaping. So, here I use some algae, duckweed kind of on the surface of the water, which is, representative of the kind of a pond environment. But it also disguises the creep. So I don't have a way to have it not creep. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And with the water you're using, does it yellow over time?
I've had, the water in that left-hand picture has been there for 10 years, and I've never had any problem with it yellowing. But again, part of that is the coloration underneath. By and large, you really wouldn't see a little bit of yellowing because of the painting that goes on underneath it.
And the final question I have written down here is, do you try and model a vague certain part of the world or era, or is it predominantly just kind of freelanced?
I'm not trying to model a specific location. I do model the Pacific Northwest. Like I said, other people are modeling Santa Fe in or Southern Pacific in Ojai. That's a desert arrangement. So my modules all are pretty densely vegetated, a lot of conifer trees. The fishing boats are representative of coastal fishing boats out of Monterey, California. Um, so it's kind of a Northern California, Oregon coastal theme, I guess you will, but not really a specific. I'm not taking a prototype and saying, "Hey, I'm going to model that exactly." It's very freelance in that regard.
But the real question is, do you ever feel like you would want to?
Yeah, I suppose there's times when as I move on in the modeling world, I may take prototypes and model them exactly. Um, but it's not the main thrust of my modeling interest. I'm an architect. I have a little bit of the artist in me. A lot of this is just uh, being a creative artist, I guess, if you will, and trying to do something in 3 dimensions that other people might do in 2.
So that just about wraps up the time that we have here today. Thank you very much for presenting today, Kevin. And make sure to check out the breakout rooms at werribee.com/OMRG.
Okay, I will go over there.
Listen, I want to talk about the NMRAx. I've been watching these guys for the last couple of months. I think these guys have really got it together. I like the radio control cars things they do, in the airplanes. And what? What do you mean they're not radio? They're not? What are they? Oh, model railroading. Oh, you guys are model railroading. That's right. I'm sorry. If you guys like the NMRA X, you should hit the like button, and also the notification bell, because this way you'll get all the content and you'll listen to all the great stuff that they're doing for the model railroading community. Okay, so it's the NMRA X. They're not radio control guys. My assistant just told me. They're model railroading guys, and they have great content. So again, hit the sub button, hit the like button, the thumbs up, and the notification bell, and you'll definitely be in tune to what's going on in the NMRAX. Take care and God bless.
Welcome back. Jacob lives too close to our next presenter, so we had to step a little bit further away. Since our next presenter resides on the most extreme location on the West Coast, a model maker himself, but known most for the notable model fir trees and kits he produces in his small little factory. Here to show us how he creates, starting from one of the Coastman's Craftsman fir tree kits, his interpretation of an HO scale Douglas fir tree. I'm now happy to introduce you to Roy Rasmussen.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to my little studio here in Port Orford, Oregon. And right now we're in the layout room. And I kind of wanted to start here because I just wanted to show you what the model trees look like that I have been producing now for about 12 years. Maybe we could get a little shot of the forest scene. This is a forest scene representative of the Pacific Northwest. It's my interpretation of what that would look like. And it features pretty much exclusively just one kind of fir tree at this point. This is the kind that I produce with my fir tree kits. It may also benefit from some other kinds of trees, which I have not introduced yet. But right now what you're seeing are trees that can be made from the fir tree kits that I produce here at Coastman. And in this layout room, this is really kind of two purposes. One, it's the layout that is, depicts in HO scale the Tillamook area of the Northwest Oregon coastline. I have sort of a natural kind of a scenery side to the layout, and then there's an industrial side to the layout that I'm working on developing further. One of the more recent additions to the Coastman's line of products are these industrial type structures such as sawdust burners and conveyor belts. Down on this end, you can see some of these items, which are kits that are now available. So that's been a passion of mine also, besides the trees, is to produce these kits that are made from 3D printed materials. So we can talk more about those later. And I'd like to do a whole nother episode just talking about these kits a little bit. Dedicated a good portion of the layout to scenery though, with large areas with really no railroad running through them. More or less just scenery shots and trying to sort of lend into a depth perception that is a little bit unique maybe to a layout. Some of the materials in the far background are probably almost Z-scale. I can show, for instance, this little dredger. This is the Nehalem dredger, which fits in my hand, obviously, which I made just for this spot way in the back of the layout. And okay, so anyhow, this is where I experiment with model fir trees and getting them on here and seeing how they look. And we could say that everything at Coastman's is tested before it goes into production. So that's a good thing, I'd like to think. Also in this room, I store all of the products for Coastman's. So here's one of our mainline products, the Variety Pack Fir Trees Kit, which produces, I think it's 7 trees of different sizes. We have larger trees. We have the 13s, the 11s, the 9s, 7s, and then if we go a little narrower, we have 8-inch trunks, 6-inch trunks, and those are tree kits. I have ready-made trees here on hand. Occasionally I do these little specialty trees. Here's one with a tree has been cut and fallen over, but it hasn't been what they call bucked up yet. So just different things, always experimenting, trying new things. This is my passion. Here's the stumps. Don't know if you can see those, but in my hand maybe better, with the roots. 3 to a package. All kinds of scenery items here. Here's the new 3D printed cyclone attachment for the sawdust burner. We've got the conveyor belt. And I know we're going to talk about making fir trees today, but I just wanted to introduce you to the whole. We've got 45 minutes here, so don't know. I wouldn't want it to be like watching paint dry, you know. So thought I'd just show you a few other things. Here's the sawdust burner kit right now that you get when you get that. Okay, and so the sawdust burner that kit I just wanted to mention is there's the real structure, and here's the model that you make from the kit. Okay, that's what this is showing you. So this is in Drain, Oregon, where this real one exists today. And this is the HO scale version, which is also the one you saw on the layout there. So, okay, so we have the tree kits. You can order all of the parts separately. Variety pack trunks. So let's say you bought a tree kit and you made all the trees with the trunks you had, but you had leftover green branches material. Then you could buy more trunks. I'm such a sweetheart, I'd probably just give you some trunks. But if you need a lot, you can buy some more trunks, and you can buy more green branches. I'm currently sold out of the large. I need to package up more, but we have the quarter size sheets packaged up at the moment of the green branches. So that unfolds. And I will be talking about this material and how to use it today and what that is. All right, so in this building, we've got the train layout. We have a model making room I'm going to give you a short tour of, and also a room specifically for doing the packaging and making the trees. So I'm going to take you on a tour there. I wanted to show you the building that exists outside of this one, which is a 16 by 10 foot structure dedicated entirely to just making the model tree trunks. So unfortunately, our Wi-Fi won't extend that far. There's some very unique machines in there, such as the tapering machine. You can find videos of that in action on my website, coastmans.com. But I won't be able to give you a first-hand tour today because we lost Wi-Fi signal on our attempts to do that. So I'll show you around here, and we'll get to making trees. Take a look at the tree kit. So this room is the model making room, is how I refer to it. I don't make trees here, but I do 3D printing of 2 types. And there's also a low temperature alloy casting centrifugal caster machine here that can make castings, the molds of which I have based on producing highly detailed 3D print parts. So that's something that's currently in progress now, developing that. 3D printing, I've been at that for a few years now. I've 2 of the filament types, 1 of the resin type printers. The filament type printers run pretty much all day. This is the original one that I started with. You may have seen this Creality Ender before, very common, the Volkswagen Bug, if you will, of 3D printers. Does a great job but it won't run continuously. So not this one. So I've got another one set up now. This is the Prusa MKS Plus, if I said it right, with the 3DQ Quinley automated printing bed system. So it's set at a 20-degree angle and has a special patented printing overlay on this steel bed called the vapor bed. And what that does, if I understand correctly, is the vapor bed, it releases the part when it becomes cool. And so as such, this machine is automated and can produce parts over and over again when I'm not here, provided everything goes right. Okay, but it does produce excellent high detail parts. Yesterday, just cranking out a few of the what I call side frame units that I use on the sawdust burner kit. So we have, for instance, 4 here, and those will go into the kits. Many other parts too. Generalized model making room with lots of paints here. All of your classic model making tools, cutters, X-Actos, what do you have you, places to work, acrylics, a lot of the usual items, small table saw, supplies, that sort of thing. Okay, now I just want to indicate where this other building is located. It's just outside here. Maybe we can just get a little shot without losing my signal. I'll stand up here. Hello again. All right, and so now let's go to where the trees are made. Welcome to the green room. This is where I make all of the fruit trees, and I do the first busy place when packages have to make it to the post office. Again, small town, they're not reading. In this room, I have my. This is where I do the basic layup of the tree, and then when the trees are all done with the green folding, I add the dead branches and sun this area. So I will put on the tool and have my system cutting the dead branches. Talk about that a little bit. You're good. And now, on my left, so right, this is a large pink box. It is essentially a heater box with some infrared on the bottom. This is where I dry everything. I sort of feel like this would be an interest because as modelers, we're always trying to get things to dry so we can get to the next step. So I'm glad that I have this because I make trees and put it in here and it'll dry within 20, 30 minutes. Or if we didn't have it, it would be all day waiting for glue to dry. So I can put other things in here too. I can dry sawdust in here, dead branches, what have you. So pretty much anything that I need to get fixed up. I do all of the sheets of the green branches material. There's forms and off there. But this is what we call a full sheet of the green material, 2 layers in thickness. So the layers here to separate right down the middle, in the middle of the plane between the 2 layers, and plenty of this extra sawdust material will fall out, which you want to collect in a box. Other cans are going to do that. Nothing goes through. So this is the material that you'll tear pieces off of to make trees. Now in a tree kit, you'll get a small, what I call a quarter sheet. Okay, so you also order the full sheet though if you go big time making lots of trees. So we've got the pink box, new branches right there. There is back here a relatively large peat root, 200 rabbit. I add some colors to the trees that I make from that year, also the same models that I made, especially product run, and what have you. All the boxes, underneath the wall, all the components can make the kit and it's useful. You need quantity of 90 parts per million, 11 inch chunks. Now this depends on what you want, your layout. What would be necessary, others would be more for everything can be doing more. All done. Different ways of mounting the trunks to a wall layout or a flat layout. I've got some people here. A variety pack looking fit. Okay, so this comes with the trunk, the green branches, and some other things. Highlights, 2 different colors. And the 2 pictures here that that's out. And those will help us plant the trees. Now the trunk,
Roger, can you hear me?
got the wooden pin, and then I started including some of these metal pins, but I don't cut them. Cut them myself. So they're a little more difficult to use, but they are sturdy. So sharpen them like that. Like this. Like you can plant the tree into the home. Let's just say, ideally, you would do this over like some kind of a container to capture all of the extra foliage. It is, in fact, ordered to the product that is very carefully filtered by me to the right grade, and then colored with one of these guys.
Fellow modelers, we're sad to announce that we have lost Andy's shoes and also the video and sound feed from Roger. So we will ask him to kindly pre-record that for us so we don't have the Wi-Fi problems and the sound problems when we air it on January 14th. So we will see you in 3.5 hours for the second part of today's NMRAx. Thank you.